I want to take a little retrospective before the video starts just so you can get a scope of my fondness for the series Little Nightmares. I found out about this series when Jacksepticeye played Little Nightmares 2 on his channel over 4 years ago. I watched gameplay of the first section and decided I had to play it for myself. I did, and then loved it and played the first one. I loved it too. As I get older, I get less and less excited about game releases, but I was ecstatic waiting for this game to come out. But the atmosphere I saw from these games were so unique and special. It felt so loved, so I loved it in return. Little Nightmares 3 came out as of recording this a day ago, and I finished the game and really want to talk about it. I want to go over what I loved about this game and why I think it's a good game made by the wrong people. Little Nightmares 1 and 2 were made by Tarsier Studios, and they had an artistic vision and handle over their own series. But the third game was announced to be made by Supermassive Games instead. This worried a lot of people, myself included, since the games were so special and unique to the people who made them. Both of the first two games felt unique, even to each other, despite featuring similar characters and even one of the same characters, that being Six. The third game had so much writing on it, as eyes were on it constantly. Fans of the series waited with bated breath to see how something so special would be with different people making it. Before I say what I'm about to say, I liked the game. It was an enjoyable experience to play through, but it's missing what was so special about the first two games. Before I continue, there are obviously spoilers in this review, so be warned. If you want to play the game, I think you should, but I don't think it's worth $40. I can tell you that before we get into the spoilers. But with this warning, the review begins. I think this game lacks in many sections, but none more than the antagonists. The game features 4 main sections, each taking about an hour to get through, give or take. Each of those sections has a main antagonist. The first is a giant doll with the instincts of a baby, and with that premise alone, a problem arises. The first two Little Nightmares games wanted you to feel uncomfortable, not solely because you have a dangerous entity hovering around you, but because those entities are uncanny. The first two Little Nightmares games wanted you to feel uncomfortable, not solely because you have a dangerous entity hovering around you, but because those entities are uncanny. Look at the first antagonists in their sections from the first and second games. The janitor from the first game did tower over the player, but this was not why you feared him. His proportions were uncanny and uncomfortable. Looking at him alone made you feel like he was dangerous because of what you don't know. The hunter from the second game takes a completely different approach to make you fear him, but stays within the guidelines of what made the janitor scary as well. The hunter has a more typical design, but immediately thrusts you into danger with his rifle. He doesn't give you time to think rationally, and instead acts as an antagonist that you have to hide from before you can get another thought in. He presents a danger to the player in the sense that you are being hunted. They set up traps to set up expectations, and then delivers in a satisfying way. With the context of what came before, let's look at what the new addition to the series did for their first boss. The monster baby is a giant antagonist who has set places to attack the players. Immediately they tried something different in that most scenes the boss isn't targeting low and alone. It is simply living and creating new things to play with. The few times where monster baby does know that you're there, you can tell the danger isn't because something is out to get you, but because you failed to be at a certain place at a certain time. A building crashing down on you. You didn't move fast enough so the light hits you. You got crushed by more debris. There's a lack of fear factor to the first main boss of the game. The design is also far too mundane to make up for the lack of mechanics. This idea could really work if they leaned into the baby aspects of horror. In all fairness, the team behind the first two games did come up with this idea with some concept art, but also in all fairness, it looks way better in execution. This image is really what I'm getting at with this video. Look at the difference between the concept art made by the original studio and the final product by the new studio with the rights. They gave you the same thing, but did it worse in almost every way. But let's move past that and talk about the next antagonist of the bunch, the Supervisor. The Supervisor scales back down to the size we're used to for the series. In this slot, the Supervisor is going up against the Twin Chefs and the Teacher. I want to focus on the Teacher because I do think that the Teacher is my favorite boss in any of the games. I think that is a very popular opinion, so take that with a grain of salt. The Supervisor is a boss that requires stealth and adheres to the boundaries of a Little Nightmares boss, so what's the problem with her? Well, the main problem here is that she lacks direction. What I mean by that is that the Supervisor starts off as an amazing antagonist. She has an eerie setup with the wooden sounds that accompany her movement. Her design is a bit bland, but it fits in with her environment. To be a strong Supervisor, you have to have a strong foundation, and it's gone. She, off-screen mind you, ditches her legs and becomes almost like a bug for some reason. This isn't prompted by the player or any external forces. It just happens. They rushed through her first appearances and immediately jumped into spider mode. They just kind of rushed through her appearances and then she just became a spider. I was shocked that I only got some of the other form of hers. I was disappointed that her design and attitude changed within minutes of meeting her. She's just such a bland antagonist. I would like to compare her to like every other scene of the teacher. I'll let you guess which one I think is more terrifying. Yeah, you can see it, can't you? The teacher has a seemingly very normal design compared to the other creatures in the game, but has a veiny, extending neck that makes the normal design feel like a trap. Like you don't know what to expect next. It instills fear when she presses her way through the vents. She's scary to look at, and her ability to stretch her neck gives the player no room for comfort. Other bosses wouldn't be able to reach you above them, but she can. She can seemingly reach forever to find you. Not to mention, you don't beat the teacher. You escape from her, unlike the supervisor, who you just press a little too hard. It's disappointing to see a good concept executed below its potential. Even the baby had potential that was brushed aside. Now let's move on to the third antagonist, the kin and mini-kin. I believe that this is the best boss in the game. You enter a carnival section where you do have to deal with guests and residents, but the main scares of the section come from appearing and disappearing dolls. You defeat them in a battle sequence just to randomly add kin and mini-kin afterwards. He had one foreshadowing scene, but he has the strangest build-up since he didn't really have any. Now, from what I understand, kin and mini-kin do show up in The Sound of Nightmares, which is a podcast featuring the in-world lore of the game, but I didn't know that going in, so it was very strange to see. But I do think that this boss does the most right compared to the others we've talked about previously. Now, comparing him to the last third phase antagonist, he goes up against the Doctor and the guests. For one, there are two main antagonists in this section, and they do this concept pretty well. When Mini-Kin is chasing you, Big Kin is waiting where you would come out. This leads to the first time in the game where you do indeed get captured by the boss. When Big Kin can't get somewhere, Mini-Kin chases the protagonists. Big Kin presents the danger for this section. Mechanics-wise, this might be the best boss in the game too. But of course we have to talk about the build-up for this character. That's not really all that much. Kin and Mini-Kin were fun, but they don't cast fear onto me. They're like obstacles more than they are a boss. They remind me more of a puzzle than they do make me feel like they're a boss. It is true that they capture the player character, which is intimidating, but that doesn't last as we of course get out after being captured. The level ends when we get into a flying air balloon and fly off into a storm. Kin shoots at us and we have to burn Mini-Kin to escape. And that's it. I wanted more from Kin and Mini-Kin. There's so much to be done here and we get very little of it. For example, in the first game, the residents and guests were scary in that they were actively devouring people. You are people in this, and they are monsters. At least that's how we saw them. In the third installment, the residents are scary none of the time. You actively only deal with a couple of them in one section of the game. Okay, I did lie a bit. When you are below a floorboard and one is looking above you, that did a great job. But that's less than a minute. There's no chase, there's just a puzzle that had to be done 4 times in the game already. The goal is to wait and then go. But I'm going to stop harping on Kin and Mini-Kin, because I do think they are the best boss in the game. The last boss of the lot is the Hypnotist. Now this boss has a lot to live up to. The lady from the first game, and either Monster 6 or the tall man from the second, depending on how you look at it, you can count either of them. All 3 of these amazing bosses have unique battles where there's emotions to be had by the characters. The lady is set out right from the beginning of the game as the major antagonist from the start. She causes the torture of 6 in the first game. And Monster 6 is Mono's friend that he is trying to save. Now it is almost certain the shadow we see holding low in a padded cell is the previous version of the character that the Hypnotist was. This character is presumed to be a character named Otto from the Sound of Nightmares podcast. But just playing the game, you have no idea about this connection, so I'll go on assuming most people don't get this without a mountain of context. With that in mind, the Hypnotist is another random appearance, but this scale is the best in the game. The hypnotist is showcased as a giant leg moving through the asylum. This immediately sets a good precedent for this boss. It takes a good 10 to 15 seconds for the leg to leave the area in its cutscene. This establishes that the danger could be omnipresent. Now the monster baby actually shares in this precedent, but where I think that this boss does better is that the monster baby had huge footsteps that foreshadowed its appearance at all of its scripted locations. The hypnotist is waiting in the background of most of the location it attacks you at. Seeing a giant extended hand or foot implies so much more than seeing the giant hand of a baby that you can see in the background. You know what to expect after that. The mind fills in what it doesn't see, and a giant arm sets an unknown in your mind. You can't predict what you're about to see, so now you fear both what you don't know and can't see. After a bit more gameplay, you can see that the hands have eyes in them. This continues to fuel the fear of what you don't see. But unfortunately, this is where the positives end for this boss. During one of its encounters, it reveals its face, and it's a face. Everything that was built up to the fear of the unknown for a mediocre reveal feels bad. It feels like you were worried for nothing. It's still big, and it's still dangerous, but now that's all it has over you. There's not much to enjoy once you get past the reveal. Not to mention the boss fight is also very annoying to get through due to the AI huffing glue. There's also a minor antagonist in this section called the nurses. There are two main ones you deal with in a room that you just avoid them in. They are missing their eyes. This means they can't see you, but they can listen out for you and feel you if you touch them. The first is only in one room, and the other you just go with a plant. I don't see the point in putting them here in the first place if they don't do anything gameplay-wise. I like their designs and concepts, but I wish they were more of a problem. But those are all the antagonists, besides some beetles, I guess. Really, I wanted more from what I actually got, and usually, that is an argument I like to stay away from. I don't like to say that a game is less because my expectations of it were higher. My expectations shouldn't form how good a game is. But in this case, I wanted a level of quality that the first two games established and didn't get, therefore leading to disappointment. After the villains part of the video, I also want to talk about another thing I noticed: how safe this game was. This game tried a couple of new things, but mostly stuck to ideas and imagery that were present in the first two games, even using one of the same locations. In a series where character designs are allowed to be varied and grotesque, why are we doing the supervisor? Look at the doctor from the second game. His design is gross and putrid, which makes it amazing. The supervisor doesn't have this issue. You don't get many good looks at her face, which is the only gross part of her design. The teacher also had a very normal design, but then had a deeply disturbing feature to extend her neck to be extremely long. It's trying to do so much of what the last two did and is failing, but when it tries to do something new, it lacks what the old games had. Unfortunately, I also want to talk about the length. Little Nightmares 1 is $20. It's a single player experience and a good game. Little Nightmares 2 is $30, and now this third go around is $40 for about 3 to 4 hours of gameplay. Now there is some replayability, but I don't think the game was long enough. The last game came out 4 years ago, and this game is beautiful, but it's far too short. I want to say this for everyone in the back. Multiplayer is not an excuse for bad gameplay. Not saying this game has bad gameplay, but there is a lack of enough gameplay. Same thing. Overall, the pieces are all here to put together a beautiful puzzle, but it's missing the picture. There's everything here to make a body, but there's no soul. It feels like an empty husk where a great past was. It's the worst game out of the three. A maze of missed opportunities and flawed executions. I enjoyed the 3 to 4 hours I had with it, and the replays that I did with my friends, even if they're bad at the game. But I wish the team behind the first two stayed, because this game has the skeleton of a great game, but lacks the vision and thought put into the first two. What am I giving it as a score? Well, I'm giving Little Nightmares 3 a 7 out of 10. There are still heartfelt moments where it counts, and the scenery is just as visceral as ever, and despite the bosses being lackluster, it was still a fun game. I got my time with it, and I'll probably play it again at least once. But the lack of the time the game gives you and the lost spark makes this a game that I do have a love-hate relationship with. It's hard for me to let this go since it's a series I love. Unfortunately, I think that Little Nightmares as we know it is gone. The new standard is set, and unfortunately it's worse than what we're used to. Supermassive Studios did an amazing job with the gameplay, making it feel exactly like the first two played, but did a horrible execution of the heart the last two games had. I would recommend that you play the game, but I would also recommend to wait for a sale, or when the DLC comes out next year. Have a good day. I love most of you. See you next time.